How did Man United go from champions of Europe to struggling to make the Champions League? The last 10 years has been the worst decade in Man United's history, and there is strong evidence that it's only going to get worse. Things like poor recruitment, bad managerial hirings, and poor tactics have destroyed the team from within. Plus, the toxic dressing room that Man United have had over the years meant the team never had a chance to reach its glory days. So who's really to blame? But the villain of this story isn't who you think. Man United have spent the last 10 years suffering, and today we break down all the things that actually went wrong, and you will realise that Man United's downfall is a lot worse than you think. Let's go back to 2013. United have just lifted the league title for the record 20th time in what was Sir Alex Ferguson's last ever season at United after 27 years in charge. A perfect farewell for the most successful Premier League manager of all time. However, uncertainty lingers as no one is sure if life after Fergie will yield the same success for the Red Devils. Sir Alex himself chose a fellow Scotsman to succeed him, Everton boss David Moyes. A decent appointment from a manager with Premier League experience, but it wasn't only Fergie that needed replacing. Man United CEO David Gill also stepped down during this period, and he was the heart and soul of the club and played a major part in the success behind the scenes, and the man that replaced him was Ed Woodward. Having two new faces at the club at such big roles left by such big personalities was really the beginning of the end, as neither were equipped for a job of this scale. The first transfer window post-Fergie was meant to bring new hope for the club, but it ended up being a horror show. Ed wanted to make some blockbuster signings to ensure the club could keep its spot at the top, but quickly realised it wasn't going to be that easy. The likes of Bale, Cruz, Fabregas, and even a return for Ronaldo were on the cards, but nothing materialised. After all the hype surrounding who United would sign, Woodward came back empty-handed. He simply did not have the pulling power Gill and Fergie had, so when deadline day came around and the team had no new incomings, Moyes brought in his former Everton player Marouane Fellaini as a panic buy for £27.5 million. A disaster start for the new guys in charge, which somehow got worse. After 6 games into the new Premier League season, they sat 12th place, having lost 3 games to Liverpool, City and to West Brom in Old Trafford. In fact, their home form that year was embarrassing. They lost 7 home games in the league and finished 7th, their lowest ever Premier League finish, and they missed out on European football. David Moyes was given an impossible job, but he did not help himself. He got rid of key coaching staff, Phelan, Still and René Meulensteen were all out the door. 3 coaches who towards the end of Fergie's tenure did most of the job, such as running training sessions. Moyes even told Meulensteen, "I would like you to stay, but I'm going to do it all myself." He wasn't impressed and left, with Moyes bringing in his own coaching staff. But with such massive changes taking place, Moyes failed to realise that getting rid of literally all the key parts to Man United's success may have been the wrong thing to do. He ended up losing the trust of the more senior players, and on April 20th, 2014, Moyes lost 2-0 to his former team Everton and was sacked just 2 days later. Moyes just wasn't cut out for the job. They needed a big name to manage a big club, and while one man was available that ticked that box. Louis van Gaal won the league with Ajax, Alkmaar, Bayern and Barcelona, and even had a Champions League under his belt with Ajax. But his most recent success was with Holland at the 2014 World Cup, where they smashed Spain 5-1 and finished 3rd at the tournament after losing on penalties to Argentina in the semis. Louis van Gaal was way more equipped for a job like this, and a big name like him needed big signings. He chased the likes of Lewandowski, Mane, Kante, Sergio Ramos and many more, but Woodward was unable to strike up a deal with any of them, as once again Woodward didn't have the negotiation skills to come up with those signings. Instead, they settled for signings that were terrible choices. They signed Di Maria for a record £60 million, only for him to leave next season for £16 million less than they bought him. In the 15-16 season, they got Depay and Schneiderlin for a combined £50 million, only for them to also leave the next season for half the price. And Martial joined for £36 million too, which was another big waste of funds. In 2 years, Louis van Gaal spent £250 million, and when you look back at it, it was a horrendous use of money, as their recruitment strategy had no real plan. Louis van Gaal also offloaded many players too, including veterans such as Ferdinand, Vidic, Nani, and even Robin van Persie. It was a complete restructuring, and in his first season in charge, it wasn't horrendous. United came 4th and secured Champions League football once again, but the red flags were there. They lost to MK Dons 4-0 in the League Cup, and tactically Van Gaal had some odd moments, including trying to start Falcao, Rooney, Van Persie and Di Maria all in the same lineup. But because he managed to get them back into European football, they gave him another year to improve on this, except it only got worse. Van Gaal's tactics focused a lot on defensive scheming and retaining possession, and it seemed like that was all they did. Keep the ball and do nothing with it. It was boring football to watch. In that 15-16 season, they had 3,222 back passes, way more than any other team in the league, and despite having around 60% possession in games, they only had 430 shots that season, ranking them 15th in the league. They played a rigid system where freedom was pretty much non-existent. In fact, it was so non-existent, Van Gaal instructed players to never shoot first time and always take a touch before shooting. But this clip shows that rule in action, as they luckily got an own goal out of it. It was football prison, and the fans were bored watching backwards passing and no attacking. It was so bad that even Van Gaal was bored watching United. They were terrible that season, failing to qualify from an easy Champions League group. Then in the Europa League, they lost to their biggest rivals Liverpool in the round of 16. They lost to Middlesbrough in the League Cup, and they missed out on top 4 in the league by goal difference. A horrible season that only got saved by, if we're being honest, an easy FA Cup run where they faced Palace in the final and Lingard managed to get the winner. It was a poor season, but at least Louis got some silverware. However, the board were impatient, the players were disgruntled, and with Jose Mourinho in the manager market, Van Gaal was let go after just 2 seasons trying to revive a pretty broken club. Despite a trophy, his most memorable Man United moment, falling on the touchline to protest the ref. It was a time for a fresh face in Mourinho, but disappointment also came with its red flags. Mourinho's last 2 jobs at Real Madrid and Chelsea both ended the exact same way, with him creating a toxic and divided dressing room which led to many player and manager disagreements before his inevitable sacking. Woodward knew the risks hiring Jose, with the toxic dressing room coming at some point, but he hoped before it got toxic, Jose would deliver a title as he did at his previous 2 clubs. His first transfer window wasn't horrendous. Buying Mkhitaryan for a combined £57 million isn't a great look, but bringing in Zlatan on a free proved more than productive, as he had a great season with Red Devils. They also brought back Paul Pogba for a world record £89 million, who was meant to be the key piece to a title-winning side. In that 16-17 season, they did finish a poor 6th place, but after a community shield at the start of the year, United reached the League Cup final, where they played Southampton, and new signing Ibra got a brace in the final, giving Jose and United another trophy before a deep Europa League run saw them reach the final against Ajax, where yet again 2 new signings in Pogba and Mkhitaryan scored to win 2-0 and secure their 3rd trophy of the year plus Champions League football. Jose did exactly what he was brought in to do, win trophies, and his relationship with players was great. So the 17-18 season meant as long as they had a productive transfer window, this team could really challenge for the title for the first time since Fergie left. However, Jose had a list of players he wanted to sign and gave them to Woodward, but as is the running theme, Woodward couldn't deliver and it left Mourinho frustrated. It's up to him and the owners. I wish Mr. Woodward all the success in his work because now it's time for me to disconnect. I'm very tired. The lack of progress behind the scenes was becoming a problem. In that transfer window, they had the chance to sign Virgil van Dijk but opted to sign Lindelof instead. They also signed Matic for £40 million and Lukaku for a massive £75 million, who really did live up to the hype or price tag. But looking back at the 17-18 season, on paper, it didn't look all too bad. They reached an FA Cup final where they sadly lost to Chelsea 1-0 and came 2nd in the Premier League behind a pretty unstoppable Man City team, an achievement that Jose would call one of the best in his career. So why was he sacked in December 2018 after pulling off United's highest league finish in 5 years? Well, as mentioned before, the dressing room was inevitably going to get toxic under Jose, and that is exactly what happened. It was such an unpleasant environment to be in that when Alexis Sanchez joined halfway through that season, after just 1 training session, he wanted to leave United, rip up his contract and return to Arsenal. His performances started to drop and he only managed 5 goals in 45 appearances during his time at United. Luke Shaw also had beef with Mourinho, with many players accusing Jose of bullying Shaw with harsh words towards the left back constantly. Jose and Martial also had their fair share of beef as well, with their relationship breaking down massively during his tenure. Even Antonio Valencia liked an Instagram post saying, "Mourinho has made watching us punishment, it's time for Mourinho to go." And obviously his most public beef came with him and Paul Pogba. The two did not see eye to eye on Pogba's role in the team, tactics, man management, everything. And after this video was posted during a bad loss to Derby, Mourinho confronted Pogba very publicly in view of all the cameras to make an example out of him. The interesting thing about this clip is Jose saw Pogba before this exchange but wanted to wait until they were in front of the cameras to call him out rather than do it privately. That was the summary of the relationship between the manager and the players. It was reported that 90% of the dressing room were ready for Mourinho to go. The players stopped playing for the manager. They were fed up. Performances started to drop, and despite the 2nd place finish, Woodward, who absolutely knew this was going to happen, had no choice but to sack Jose, and they were back to square one. After Mourinho left, Ole took charge as caretaker manager. He didn't really have the credentials to take over the team, but he was a club legend and was tasked with bringing some life to a pretty disappointing team. But Ole took charge of a few games and went his first 12 Premier League games unbeaten, winning 10 and drawing 2. But what really gave him all the praise was their Champions League round of 16 tie against a strong PSG side. They lost the first leg 2-0 at Old Trafford and went to Paris in the second leg with little expectation. Yet Ole somehow managed to drag this team to a massive comeback win, 3-1, capped off by a Rashford penalty in the 94th minute. Was he really going to be the man to finally fulfill the true potential of this team? Well, Rio definitely thought so. and his wish came true. Ole was given the full-time role, but maybe they jumped the gun because they won just 2 of their last 9 league games and finished 6th place, which was the same place Jose left United in. But regardless, Ole was at the wheel and he finally got to discuss with the board some new transfers. The last signing Jose made was Fred for £52 million, which was a massive waste of money. So it was important that during Ole's time at manager, they didn't waste funds. So how did United do in the 3 years he was in charge? They made Maguire the most expensive defender in football history for £80 million, and he very obviously was not worth that much money. Wan-Bissaka was bought for £45 million, which was another big overspend. Amad Diallo for £37 million, who you probably forgot even played for United. Donny van de Beek was bought for £35 million, and he plays just as much football in the Premier League as I do, and I'm not a professional footballer. Sancho was bought for £73 million, and he was extremely unproductive during his time under Ole, and now he is on his way out for probably nothing. The only sensible transfers that were made during Ole's time was Varane, Cavani and Bruno Fernandes. Not to mention Ronaldo was also brought, but we'll get into that later. £411 million spent in 3 seasons on mediocrity. United's recruitment strategy has never worked, and under Ole it somehow got even worse. And the biggest problem was Ole had zero influence on transfers. While yes, Woodward didn't also get Van Gaal or Jose's targets, both managers still played a major part in transfer business. But with Ole, he simply did not have the power to start demanding players left, right and centre. In fact, Ole told United to sign Haaland for just £4 million as the two had a strong relationship, but United passed on him. He also wanted United to sign Declan Rice, Jude Bellingham and even Harry Kane. 4 signings that would have seriously changed the trajectory of the team, but the board didn't listen and instead went with their own strategy, and that left them with £400 million of steaming hot In terms of the pitch performances, Ole had no real play style or tactics. He relied on counter-attacking football, which worked sometimes, but was not a sustainable way for United to play football. Nevertheless, in the 1920 season, he finished 3rd in the league but lost in the semi-finals of the League Cup to Man City, lost in the semi-finals of the FA Cup to Chelsea, and lost in the semis of the Europa League to Sevilla. 3 semis in 1 year, but they would have hoped to improve on that in the 2021 season. Trophyless once again. You'd think after being so close for 2 years straight, they'd improve and push for silverware, but the 21-22 season was the year it all went to shit. They were battered 5-0 by Liverpool at Old Trafford early in the year, only to lose 2-0 to City at Old Trafford, but the final straw was a 4-1 embarrassment to Watford, which saw Ole get sacked midway through the season. The same problems and troubles followed this team and nothing changed. And Ole summed up exactly what went wrong. Things had soured. Some weren't as good as their own perception of themselves. Some players felt like they should have played more and weren't constructive to the environment. United scrambled as they needed to find a replacement manager, but there was no one in the manager market, so Ralf Rangnick joined till the end of the season, but he couldn't save United. He had just a 39% win rate during his 6 months and failed to implement his pressing tactics as this team were disinterested. They stopped caring, and the team was in the worst position it's been since Fergie left. But let's go back to the Ronaldo signing. While yes, Ronaldo did score a lot of goals, including some very clutch last-minute winners, should United have actually signed him? Well, no. He didn't fit the pressing from the front philosophy Ole wanted to implement, but this highlighted the biggest issue under Ed Woodward. United had gone from a football club to a commercial business. It is literally the only reason why the Glazers appointed Ed as chairman, because he knew how to generate commercial revenue, but he knew nothing about football. When it came to signing Ronaldo, it wasn't about what he can do for the team on the pitch, it was a chance to boost revenue, shirt sales and sell more tickets. It's the same reason they bought the likes of Pogba, Sanchez, Lukaku, Di Maria and more, simply because they were big flashy names that could generate money for the club. That approach obviously didn't work, and when Ronaldo did his exit interview with Piers Morgan, he exposed the truth.
They don't care about the club. I mean, professional sport.
This was the truth. The Glazers acquired the club by putting the club itself into hundreds of millions of pounds in debt, and they have invested none of it back into the club. Old Trafford is still falling apart with reports of leaks, decay and even a mice infestation. Plus the training facilities and even the academy are all outdated and worn out. It was so bad that former Man United legends had a period of sending their kids to the Man City academy. The Glazers neglected everything about the club with the sole purpose of making themselves richer, which hit a boiling point after they announced their plan to join the Super League, which gave them instant backlash, resulting in massive protests and eventually Woodward's resignation. Then after Ronaldo's dramatic exit from the club, the Glazers put United up for sale as this was the final straw from the fans. And that brings us to present day, under a new CEO and manager Erik ten Hag, who has had more of a say in the transfers, bringing in 2 of his former players at Ajax. He managed a 3rd place finish in the league, a cup final and a trophy in just his first season, so things actually looked like they were turning around for Man United. But yet again, the same issues persisted. They spent 60 million on Mount and 80 million on Antony, which looks like a waste of 140 million. Plus, the toxic club culture hasn't changed. Ten Hag called out Sancho live on TV, in which Sancho fired back, and now, just like Ronaldo, is being forced out of the club. Not to mention the team still has arguments constantly, plus the entire Greenwood situation was just a mess. So even under a new CEO, the same problems occur. So what can United actually do to fix this? Well, Sir Jim Ratcliffe now owns 25% of United, and with massive ownership power, he is the only one that can address these issues. They need to fix the stadium as soon as possible, revamp the academy structure, develop a proper recruitment strategy, as well as get the players and manager on the same page. If Ratcliffe can start fixing those issues from now, then this is finally United's chance for a permanent change. But that will take time. The brutal truth is United won't be good again for some time while they fix this mess. But if Ratcliffe puts effort and care into fixing this club, then United's dark days might finally get brighter.